Hello Internet, hello Final Fantasy fans, hello War of the Vision players, I'm Jackie Fox, and today we're going to be talking about heavy armor. And boy, especially compared to some other things, there is a lot to cover here. There are a lot of different types of heavy armor and a lot of different categories. This is also one of the places where I think that it is most important to highlight TMRs, something that I've been basically excluding from the rest of the weapons series. So now that we're talking about armors, we're going to talk about TMRs as well. We're going to talk about utility armor, all sorts of stuff. So let's get started with defense. And our best defense armor is going to be our newest of the legendary reliquaries armors. It's the only legendary reliquaries armors, but it's one of the newest pieces of legendary reliquaries equipment as I'm making this video. We have 22 defense here, which is on par with basically everything else. There are some TMRs that we'll talk about that can technically get higher than that, although also due to changes in the future, they can't. They actually can't. So welp, some of the stats on here aren't going to be relevant for very long. But we'll talk about that a little bit more when I get to the TMR section. HP is 1359, which is definitely higher than anything else. I think that there's some other armor that can reach that level of HP in vital builds, but that really sacrifices a lot more important stats. Other stats, we have 15 critical evasion and 6 spirit, which is decent. It's actually one of the it is the highest of the physical defensive armors, although it's not a lot. But let's face it, we have a more physical meta than we do a magical one, so this is probably right where it needs to be. You also get 10% damage reduction, at least against physical and magical damage. There are technically damages that fall outside of that description, but we'll just call this 10% damage reduction when your HP is above 50%. So for characters that are already pretty tanky that can keep their HP up like that, this is just makes it easier for them to do so. You also have a debuff weakening effect of 15 and an additional 30% critical evasion. So this is a total of 45 critical evasion just on this one armor. It's going to be really hard to crit on a character wearing this, and because of that, this can potentially turn off some activate on crit abilities that have become fairly popular among characters nowadays. The next best piece of armor, probably, that's pretty good, is the platinum armor. Is it worth it? Hell no. This is kind of like the Sage's staff in that it's, I don't know if you'd call it a prestige armor, or I would like to think of it as a frustration armor. It's going to be nearly impossible to build this guy up to a +6, but if you do, it is technically a free armor. Well, they're all free armors. It's a pain in the ass to buy. It's maybe a less free armor. I don't know. You'll pay for it in your blood, sweat, and tears. You'll pay for it in rubbing your fingerprints off tapping the screen. 22 defense, which ties it up with our Maximilian. We have 956 HP, which is second only to the Maximilian in terms of defensive builds. 4 spirit, not bad. Not 6, but not bad. And -2 evasion, which is out of the ones that lose evasion on here, which is basically all of the rest of them, that is the lowest evasion loss value. So not great, but not bad. You're going to have single target resistance of 10, which is great. Strike resistance of 10, so this is going to be your strike resistance heavy armor. And all element debuff resistance of 50%. So honestly, this armor deals with Alaya the Alabaster really well. She likes to debuff lightning resistance. She is a strike unit without too much to deal with strike resistance, and also her strongest attack is single target, so this will reduce the damage of that quite nicely. That being said, out of all of these armors, it is the hardest to get. It is just a pain in the ass. Then we have the Azure Dragon's armor. I rank this armor a bit lower because it is exclusive to spear-wielding characters. So there aren't many characters that can build this, and it's probably pretty low on your building priorities. especially with the Maximilian available. So it used to be the case that because of limited armor, if you didn't build the Azure Dragon's armor, you didn't have really an option for those characters for a physical armor. But now you have the Maximilian, so you don't necessarily have to raid for this armor anymore. That being said, if you want to, for your Oberon or whatever, it has 22 defense, 798 HP, 2 spirit, -3 evasion. And, as its passives, we have single target resistance of 8, which, if you're at all keen on math, you will notice is less than 10. But it has 15% HP, which is generally pretty helpful, as well as Berserk and Charm resistance of 50%, which, Charm is probably more impactful than Berserk, but both of these things happen. There are meaningful characters that deal both of these status ailments, and they are both pretty impactful in screwing you over. So this is potentially pretty helpful. There is also a buff that Dragoons tend to get that can Berserk them, and is that Dragoons? I think that's an axe thing. Oberon gets it regardless. So it might help save you. It might kind of make that counter ability less risky, but I highly doubt it. It still seems like crap to me. So the Azure Dragon's armor is okay, but I wouldn't go out of my way to build it. The one that I would go out of my way to build, though, out of the UR raid revival, raid armor type stuff, is the Brigandine. The Brigandine is equipable by anyone who can equip a sword and heavy armor, so most of the heavy armor units. 22 defense, 854 HP, which is, of the ones that you don't have to do something really special to acquire, is the highest. 5 Spirit, which is also the highest of the non-legendary reliquaries' defensive equipments, and -5 Evasion, which is also the highest negative evasion value. So these characters, unfortunately, will not be evasive. And when I say sword equipable, I also mean like great swords as well. Katanas, maybe? I don't know. But definitely great swords. And then for our passives, we're going to get AoE resistance of 10 and HP of 15%. This is great. It's very similar to the passives on the Azure Dragon armor. Single target resistance is switched out for AoE resistance and slightly more, but no status resistances, which I don't care that much about, so it's not that big of a deal. I would just be happy that the Brigandine is far more equipable than the Azure Dragon's armor. Finally, we have the Golden Armor. It's the only MR level armor that I put on here, okay, look, get the Maximilian, right? That is a lot easier to acquire than the Platinum armor for sure, and the Azure Dragon's armor and the Brigandine, you're going to have to get through raids, which aren't always available. That's kind of tough. So if you're looking for an entry-level farmable armor, if you want something that's not the Maximilian, maybe you have 2 heavy armor units on your team, then you're probably going for the Golden armor, if not a TMR or something else. Golden armor has 20 defense, 669 HP, so lowest value in each of those. 3 spirit, almost the lowest value there. -3 agility, which hurts a lot. -3 evasion, which is not fun, but probably irrelevant to most of these characters. But also -2 accuracy, which is a bit of a handicap as well. So, woof. The supporting stats are not good there. Especially the -3 agility is just crippling, I think. It's just not fun, but I guess this is the one that you can farm. Slash resistance of 8% in addition to slash resistance debuff resistance of 50%, which is pretty helpful. It means half the time they won't be able to hit you with a slash break, so that's cool, especially for something that already is invested into slash resistance. Does this make this a great armor outside of that? Is this an incredibly niche armor that has a lot of drawbacks? Yes, 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 yes. But it's the only armor, I think, on this entire list. So it is what it is, and what it is farmable. So if you want to farm heavy armor, it's going to be the Golden armor. We should also talk about TMRs, although I do want to mention that we are looking at a future QOL update, which is going to move trust runes from Trust Masters onto characters directly. So, you will see, at least for the defense, I have added 12 potential defense to every one because runes can give you an extra 12 defense. So, this is now not a thing that's going to be on your TMRs, so something like the Glinting Armor is only ever going to have 10 defense, not 22. Just saying, this is a little bit of a demerit potentially for TMR armors, but it is what it is, and I think that what I've selected here is good enough even outside of that paradigm. So let's talk about it. We have, well, also, again, because there are so many hard to get UR armors on this list, it's important to be able to have some alternatives that maybe you can get in a different way. One of the easiest to get is probably going to be Rob's armor, the Glinting Armor. We're going to have 10 defense here, base, as in addition to 482 HP. I know these stats are a lot lower, but they're meant to be supplemented with trust runes. Again, that's a little unfortunate that we're not going to have those anymore on them, but whatever. The buff here, though, is the amazing part. This is Keen Blade. That's going to be 20 slash attack and 500 CT for allies in a square around the user. 500 CTs is literally half a turn. This is a half quicken in an AoE, plus slash attack 20 for 3 turns. So just an incredible offensive steroid. You're going to be faster and you're going to be more powerful. This thing got banned in tournaments. There's still places where this gets banned. This is probably one of the more powerful TMRs in the game, even now. Another older TMR that you could equip is the White Wolf's Armor from Glaciella. This is only 9 defense, 424 HP, but it's also going to come with 4 spirit and 8 accuracy. The buff here is War Maiden's Vitality, which is going to be 15% slash resistance in addition to 20 AP. Not necessarily the best buff ever, and honestly with the update to the way that trust runes work, I think this might actually fall off the list entirely. But if it's what you have, and it might be better than the golden armor, I don't know. Try it out. It certainly will be until they make the change to the way the trust rune system works. And then we have the Stern armors. Stern has gotten pretty decent armors historically. The Accursed armor has 10 defense, 444 HP, 12 crit rate, and the buff is Eternal Enmity, which increases your single target resistance by 25 for 3 turns, which is pretty big, and especially in an era where some of the most devastating attacks, Stag Impact, is a single target ability. So this is a really helpful buff. And while this may not have always been a armor worth mentioning, I think it certainly is now. And then that brings us to Wing of Destiny Stern's newest armor, the Incarnation. This is going to have 12 defense, a total of 24 if you max it out on trust runes, 336 HP, and 10 crit rate. This is also going to come with the buff Blade of Overcoming, which is going to give you a small AP restore of 5%, but 25 physical human killer, and there's a lot of characters for whom this is pretty important. There's a lot of units that want to boost human killer to boost their damage. One that I can think of in particular is Bart's. Bart's follow-up attack is going to be really heavily modified by human killer and almost nothing else. So getting this buff in addition to restoring some AP for him, is going to be a great way to have him deal additional follow-up damage. Do you necessarily need Bart's doing maximum follow-up damage? Is human killer the right thing to chase for him? I don't know. That is a scholarly argument outside of myself. But if you wanted to give him physical human killer 25 on a buff, in addition to some AP restore while giving him a nice piece of armor, the Incarnation is the way to go. Next, let's move over to utility. And you might be asking, like, what utility? And some of the utility armors I've got to admit, are less useful now, I think. There was definitely a time and place for these two armors a little while ago that made them a little bit more important than they are today, but I still think that they're useful if you want to do it this way. And these are going to be the armors that increase bravery and faith respectively. So we have the Master Spalter, that's going to have 10 to 22 defense, 493 HP, and 10 accuracy. The buff is Tempered Focus. This is going to give bravery 10 and defense of 15 to allies in a square. This is a good AoE bravery buff. This is good for your bravery farming team. This is good to put alongside your samurais, or maybe on one of your samurais who can typically wear heavy armor. And this is going to help them, in addition to mediation, build up their team's bravery even faster. Good armor for bravery farming. Although, due to some changes to the game, people don't usually bravery farm that way anymore. But if you still do, this is going to be helpful for you. If you're faith farming, though, the Polians of the Unrivaled, which has a spirit of 14 to 26, and an HP of 408, 6 defense, and 8 critical rate, has a buff Mystic Conduit, which is going to boost your faith by 6, your magic by 40, and your dex by 30. So this is already a pretty powerful buff for a magic damage dealer as it is, and this is also a pretty excellent buff to just throw this armor on a character, have them run this buff, and then just send them on a mission 100 times and have them come back with full faith. This is a really great way to faith farm without clearing up space within your barracks. Of course, there are other ways of doing this. Perhaps Moore's TMR is a really good example of this. That's a lot more equipable because this is only going to work for people who can equip heavy armor. And really, there aren't a lot of mages or faith-heavy units that wear heavy armor. So it's a little bit weird, but it does what it does, and it does what it does well. It additionally has a fairly decent stat line, so good deal. And then some limited armors that are worth noting. First, I'm going to mention the Windrake Spalter from Bart's. I'm going to mention this particular armor, not because I think it's amazing, while it's pretty good, it's because it's free and you probably have it. I mean, not you probably have it because, you know, you had to invest at least a little bit into Bart's to get him up to level 99, or he's probably stuck at like 79 or 89 if you only did the challenge board. But if you did 99 him and you did get the Windrake Spalter, it is a decent piece of armor that you absolutely can use in lieu of the Azure Dragon's armor, the Brigandine, or the Golden armor. 12 defense, maximum of 24 for now, 450 HP, 6 spirit, and 4 critical evade. The buff is Windrake's Mastery. That's going to be a 40% attack buff. And Dispel haste on hit 2 allies in a cross-shaped pattern. So, haste is pretty common. This is a little bit niche, I would say, in the Dispel haste, but it is common enough that it is a niche that you can definitely exploit with this armor. And even if you don't find and don't connect with a lot of haste here, the 40% attack buff is great for a lot of teams running these days as well. So, like, I wouldn't kick it out of bed. And then one of my favorite limited pieces of armor, just one that I overlooked. I think when it came out, I wasn't sure what I thought of it. But then after pulling the unit on a few accounts, I really started using this regularly. This is one of my favorite pieces of armor, period. And it's Al's Shoulder Spike from Alphonse from the Full Metal Alchemist collaboration. This is going to be 8 defense and 8 spirit, and additionally 8 critical evasion. For 616 HP, the buff here is called Drain Glyph. This is going to be 40% attack in addition to draining 20% damage done for 3 turns for allies in a cross-shaped pattern. If you can get this in the middle of your physical attack team early on in a fight, if you can get this cast on all 3 of your characters in guild battle or arena, you're going to have built-in healing and just incredible damage. It's a great damage steroid that's going to keep your units alive and going to keep you swinging into round 2 in guild battle. I really like this armor, and even though it's limited, even though for people who don't have it right now, if it's not sitting in your inventory right this minute, you're not going to be able to get it. I think it's worth noting that if you have it, you should maybe use it. And then finally, and this is way more of a niche than I thought it would be, we have the Spirit Armor. And there's only one of these. It's the Knight's Armor. It's also a Raid Revival reward. It gets a total of 22 Spirit, which puts it on par with our defensive armors. 842 HP, which is pretty much up there. It's right around the Brigandine, right around just below the Platinum Armor. And then we're going to have 6 defense, which is great. 6 Spirit was only on the Maximilian, so this one has a lot of defense. A lot more defense than you might expect. But it also has -7 evasion, which is the heaviest evasion cut that we've seen. Thankfully, though, no negative agility. Good grief. And then the downside for this piece of armor for me is it just has, in addition to the fact that we don't exist within a very magical meta, it's a very physical meta right now, so there's not a lot of opportunities to use this armor to its maximum benefit. The only passive here is magic resistance of 15. Now, that does stack excellently with 22 Spirit, but is that all? Like, we've got AoE resistance and single target resistance armors in the physical side. You're giving me magic resistance of 15? Is that it? Can I get some HP 10% or something else on this armor? I don't know. It's not my favorite, but it's the only one that does what it does, so if you need to do what it does, you're gonna need it, basically. I mean, I guess you could build the Polians of the Unrivaled. That's always an option. Although, that's only going to be 14 Spirit after the update, and no magic resistance. Just a whole lot of power and potentially some faith. Wow. So that was a heck of a video. That was a lot to talk about and a lot of armors to cover. There were definitely some more TMR armors that I could have talked about. I'm kind of surprised that I only talked about 8 here. Lots of options for that. Tell me your favorite TMR armor in the comments. Did I pick your favorite TMR armor to talk about in this video, or is there a TMR heavy armor that you feel like I missed? And keep in mind, we're not talking about helmets here. Helmets are kind of a separate space. There's not many of them. It's one of those kind of niche categories that I guess I'll cover eventually, but there's really not a lot to distinguish there. There's really 3 or 4 pieces of equipment, but whatever. There are a lot of armors, though. Even if we factored out the TMRs from this, there's still 6 great viable armors here. So I hope that this has clarified some things for you and made it easier to choose armor for your team, or maybe armor that you want to get in the next raid revival, what you really want to aim for and save all of your raid revival medals for. Or maybe you're looking at a particular character in your inventory who's sitting at level 89 and saying, you know, if I leveled 99 you and got your Trust Master, maybe I'd have a pretty cool piece of armor out of that. Especially right now when you can get all sorts of extra added bonuses, like we've got double the shards in barracks and triple the shards in hard quests for Wing of Destiny Stern right now because of the Reincarnation Festival event. So if you have Wing of Destiny Stern and you want the Incarnation's great armor, then you could be taking advantage of both of those things to build him up to level 99 right now and get that armor for yourself. So lots of options here. And I hope that makes it easier for you, while also showing you some things that you might not have been aware of. And with all of that being said, if you appreciate this content, let me know in the comments, but also like and subscribe. I can't tell you enough. I cannot say this enough as a YouTuber, apparently. Like and subscribe, like and subscribe, like and subscribe. Oh, thanks. Finally you did it. I don't know why I had to say it 4 times, but here we are. So I guess if you've liked and you've subscribed, then the only thing that's really left to do is to check that link in the description box. That's going to be your one-stop shop, your access to the rest of the Jackie Fox extended universe, media empire, and conglomeration of coolness. So if you are interested in Jackie Fox stuff all over the internet, if you would like to follow me around like a lost puppy dog on the interwebs, I have all sorts of content available for you if you've got the time for it, including books, both realistic and fantasy fiction, but also podcasts about class struggle or all sorts of things, even outside of video games. So if you have other interests, maybe I do too. Check them out. And with that being said, I'll see you in the next one.